Hello and welcome into the latest edition of ESPN FC. Craig Burley and Kay Murray here in the studio with a look ahead to a big weekend in the Premier League, particularly in terms of the title race, where Arsenal will play before Manchester City. Arsenal must win this game because defeat would mean, before City even play, the title is theirs. These are the odds to win it. Obviously, City massive favourites with what's left to play. But it is City facing Chelsea at the weekend on Sunday and Arsenal taking on Nottingham Forest on Saturday. Let's welcome in Aage, Fjortoft and Frank Leboeuf to talk more about this. Frank, let me start with you. Your former club Chelsea, can they play a part in this title race by taking points off Manchester City?
I don't think so. Even if I think that at the best, Chelsea could cope with, or could try to cope with Manchester City. But if Manchester City plays the way they play, especially the first half against Real Madrid, I think no club, no team can cope and fight against that team. They are the top of the top. They are the best team in the world, and they are impossible to beat. Now, yeah, there is a possibility. There's always a possibility in football to surprise people, and you don't know what kind of mood the City player is going to be. Well, there will be some rotation, I guess, some changes from Guardiola, but what kind of mindset the Chelsea player will be in? Hopefully, they're going to get a little bit of pride and make sure that they're not going to be ridiculized by the citizens. They're going to fight. Hopefully, they're going to fight until against the citizens, and don't disturb or don't do enough to not make sure that the Premier League battle of the top is only fair.
Chelsea with a say in this?
Not particularly. City have battered them this season already. The games are not coming thick and fast for City now. They have the game on Sunday. They got another week to the final day of the Premier League season. They got another week, 6 days to the FA Cup final. They have another week then to the Champions League final. So there's really no reason to rest players. It's not like they have another big game on Tuesday or Wednesday and then it's coming. They've got all those out of the way. So he'll make some changes, Guardiola that is, but he doesn't have to make wholesale changes because they literally have a week between games now. All the sort of hard work is done. The groundwork is done. And they're at home. And I think even the Arsenal players themselves know, because they'll have watched that game in midweek. We all watched it. What a performance that was. That even 50 or 60% of that is enough to beat this Chelsea side. Don't forget, and one of the lads, not me, mentioned it, in midweek, they beat Real Madrid by 5 goals easily over 2 legs, and Erling Haaland didn't score. So, and if he doesn't play, Julian Alvarez will play. So no, I don't see it. I see City just going unbeaten now. The squad's too good, and they're just playing too good a football for anybody, I think, to stop them.
Yeah, and Mikel Arteta has said in his press conference ahead of the weekend that this City side is probably the best ever in the history of the Premier League. Would you agree with that?
Well, that is a statement. I mean, that's what we usually say when we don't respect our history. I've been around for a couple of years in football, and I've seen some great teams, some invincibles from Arsenal themselves. We've seen some fantastic Sir Alex Ferguson teams, and Liverpool, of course, with Klopp at their best. But there was something about that game against Real Madrid. There was some statement there, especially in the first half, when they, for first 10 minutes, they were just great. And then the last 35 minutes, they were just unbelievable. I mean, I've never seen the intensity. And they played Real Madrid. The way they did that. And what I like about Pep Guardiola, and I think one of the reasons Arteta will come up with a statement like this, is that he sees that although Manchester City has won the last 3, 4, 5 years, all Premier League titles more or less, it's about that there is an evolution in his game with Grealish, with a big number 9, with Haaland and so on, and they just seem to get better. And I think that is the main thing that you can say it's up there with the best teams you've seen in the Premier League. Well, and we can have all these discussions, and is it good in the pub to have a discussion who is the best manager ever. But what I like with the likes of a Wenger, a Sir Alex Ferguson, a Pep Guardiola, they somehow managed to make new teams. There is an evolution there is a progress. They do things differently, and Pep Guardiola has done that again.
I think best team, you certainly could argue that with other teams. I think there's less of a debate, in my opinion, if we're talking about, is this the best footballing side we've seen?
Yeah.
The type of football they play, how attractive it is. I think there's a really good argument for that over the last 20 years, say, of whatever. How did the Premier League? It's 30 years? 20 years?
92.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever it is. So I think there's a good argument for that. I think there's less of an argument to say they're the best team, because there have been some really good teams, as Jan mentioned. Being a really good team doesn't necessarily mean you've played the most attractive football. It just means you've gelled as a team and you've got the trophies at the end of the year. The 99 treble winning side, the Invincibles, there's been others. Ferguson built and rebuilt and dismantled and rebuilt many, many teams over 25 years. But I do think it's probably the best side that I've seen in the Premier League in terms of the football that they play.
We're just trying to make ourselves feel better by thinking it might be 20 years. It's definitely 30 years.
30. Well, I knew
you're getting old, Wes.
I knew it was 90. I knew it was early 90s, but my maths weren't very good.
No, but that's what happens, isn't it, when you start to think, could it really be that long ago? Go on, Frank.
Okay, I really think that comparing generation is a real mistake. You cannot compare the football of the 90s with the football that we are having now, with the VAR, with everything. Football was more physical at the time. I think referee let the game play on more than it does now. I think it would have been hard to the City of nowadays fighting against maybe the Invincible or maybe against Mr. Sir Ferguson's team. And coping with Roy Keane is a different way of playing football than playing against Valverde, Rodrigo or Kroos or anybody in the middle of the park. Playing against Wise, playing against Craig Burley, or playing against anybody in the middle of the park. Those guys were tough in football. It would be maybe impossible for the new generation. Now it would be almost impossible for those generation to cope with the football, the technicality, the tactic of Guardiola, because it goes too fast. Because technically they're very good. So comparing teams and generation, I think it's not fair to football and to the history of football.
Some of the laws have changed. Some of the laws have changed as well, Jan. I mean, for example, the rolling the goal kick out 5 yards to a centre half. Obviously, that and teams are doing that. A lot of teams are doing it very riskily, and the fullbacks pushing on. It's and Stevie's mentioned this on the show many times. Is that the game has obviously evolved, and the pitches are better. The protection, as Frank mentioned, is better. All these things are for the better. But I've never seen, back certainly if we're talking about the 90s, in the late 90s, when Ferguson had one of his many great teams, was when you went to Old Trafford or any of these grounds, if I'm playing with Frank Leboeuf isn't far behind me, right? There's a bunch of midfielders in the middle of the park, and then the opposition defence isn't that far away. The game was very congested. It was very congested. And that's the way it was played. And you used to look round sometimes and go, my God, there's no space. Now it's a very different outlook from the coaching perspective. It's about stretching the game. It's about making the pitch as wide as possible. Not suggesting that never happened, but it happened less frequently. And so I think the comparisons are very, very difficult. So unfortunately on this show, we make a lot of comparisons. But it is, Jan, it's very difficult to compare what the guys are doing now or the players are doing now and what was happening back then.
Yeah, it's a very valuable point. And we saw the other day on one channel, Patrick Vieira and Roy Keane were together in the game. And they were kind of saying that what they actually said is that they're missing themselves. But that's the other thing. But I think there was quite interesting discussion because they saw that the leader of Arsenal now is Martin Ødegaard. He's weighing nothing. He's a small guy in midfield. you have Saka there, you have small players all around. And so I think that, first of all, to compare players, who's the best, you can only be as good as you are in your generation. That is point number one. And also, we had it on the show the other day, we were talking about the leadership, the leaders, the managers, the type of managers we had back in the days. I'm not saying that all the valuables were bad, but there were some about the passion and someone never to lose and all that kind of things. But you see now, when I'm being critical to some of the bad teams playing out from the back, but I think that we have to be as honest that we could be in our generation, that we see now the skills, a left back, a centre half, a defensive midfielder, a number 6, a number 8, a Gundogan in midfield. They have more skills than some of the, well, let's put it, the average players. I mean, a big respect for Frank. You won the World Cup, Craig. You played for some great sides, but you've seen the players now. There is a skill in them that we didn't see back in the 90s. I think we have to be honest about that.
I would love to see some of these players now, though, trying it with some of those coaches. you know, in the modern day, you see them. Yeah, you see the guys rolling it out, and they overhit the ball to they'll try and chip it over the striker to the fullback, and maybe just overhit it, and the coach is like that. You were not getting applauded, but have you tried that? Have you tried that back when we were playing? You got the manager running down the touchline wanting to kill you. I mean, it's just, but it's changed for the better.
Right.
It's changed for the better. You know, it's very aesthetically, it's pleasing. The stadiums are great. The football generally is fun. There are still teams that are very poor to watch, of course, but a lot of the football now, and the kids are going out to try and replicate it, how it's all done. It's technically, it is very, very good at the moment, particularly at the elite level.
It's funny you brought it up because I watched about 6 games yesterday with Stevie, and he said, I would love to play now with all that space. He literally said it yesterday when we were watching the games. Let me talk to you, Jan, about Erling Haaland. We just saw him win the Football Writers Award with a massive percentage of the vote as well. Would he have swapped that award to have had a goal against Real Madrid in this performance that's going to go down in history?
No, he wouldn't, because he won against Real Madrid and he was a major part in that game. You see his link-up play is getting better. His heading ability is getting better. So it's all about his development. And I can see him going into the next season. Can he do over 50 goals again? Well, I can never underestimate Erling Haaland. But I always know that he will turn into a better player next year, because you can see now slowly that the way that when he played for Manchester City, when he played with that coach, when he played with those teammates, he's developing as a player.
I mean, I think only one of those was really down to him, as Jan mentioned, the first one. I mean, I think Courtois, I mean, there's some great keepers around. You know, the boys, Don was chirping on about the 2 Milan keepers, Inter and Milan. Very good goalies, obviously. Magnon and Anana. Good with their feet as well. We've seen Ederson, we've seen Alisson, and we know Courtois has been through, not in the last 18 months, but 2 or 3 years ago, he was having a tough time, getting booed and blah, blah, blah. But I think he's the best shot stopper on the planet at the moment, and I think that's the only thing that stopped Erling Haaland getting on the score sheet. His link-up play, as you mentioned, I think that was the one for me, and when I saw the link-up play for that third chance, with how he linked up with Gundogan, is saying to me, forgetting all the goals he's scoring, do you think Guardiola is technically improving this player as well? Because that's a frightening prospect.
Yeah, I think when we started the season, remember Erling said in a joke, he said, my dream is to have 5 touches and 5 goals. And Guardiola said, no, I don't want that. I want you to be more involved. And then we have some hybrid, can we say that, games where he tried overdo it. He went too low to try to get the ball, and then he get up again. But I think that is the balance in his game. Yes, Santiago Bernabeu, he was back not having a lot of touches in that game. But I think that his coaching and how they're doing it, they're finding each other more and more. And I think that the main game was Bournemouth away. I think they won 4-1. They tried too much to find him, but we saw in that week there have been some conversation because Guardiola saw that they have to find him more about his ability, and he is giving that back to be a link-up player. Because if you're going to play a Manchester City, that has to be a part of it as well. So I think that Erling Haaland will be even better next season. Like I said, if he will score over 50 goals, I don't know. But he will be a better player also for Manchester City next season.
You mentioned swapping the football writers. He certainly would for something tangible in the FA Cup final, June 3rd, and he absolutely would to be the man that delivers for Man City for the first time ever in Istanbul. That he would probably give all his goals this year to be the man that delivers the Champions League for them. I mean, that's how big it's going to be.
Well, looking ahead to the weekend, when it comes to the predictions, nobody's given Chelsea a chance in this game.
Oh, not even Frank?
City. Not even Frank. He gives them a goal, but he doesn't give them a chance.
I'm not a kamikaze, guys, you know. We can give a chance to Chelsea when you see City playing, you know. You have to be fair.
It may not matter anyway, obviously. Before that, Arsenal will be away at Nottingham Forest, just taking a look at what's left in the season for both sides. We've gone through that.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN Plus.